This is the third and final part of our conversation with Ben Norton. He's a reporter for Alternet's Grayzone project. There's been reports that the Trump administration is going to do another massive arms deal like has been done by previous administrations to Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. What's your response to that? It seems like the Trump administration is still going to continue the traditional ties with the regional powers, including Saudi Arabia, which of course is not one of the countries on Trump's Muslim ban, but has been directly linked to 9/11.
Absolutely. And if you look in 2009, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, signed a State Department memo acknowledging that Saudi Arabia is the world's largest supporter of extremist Sunni groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Like you mentioned, the declassified 29 pages of the congressional inquiry into the 9/11 attacks shows links to Saudi Arabia. You can get on the list. I mean, Saudi Arabia is an extreme theocracy. It's in many ways similar to ISIS. It's actually been described as, the white ISIS. ISIS is the black ISIS, Saudi Arabia is the white ISIS. When you look at the Trump administration's policies, it's a continuation of status quo ante. So Mike Pompeo, Trump's CIA director, recently awarded a crown prince of the Saudi monarchy who oversees so-called counterterrorism policy. And the head of the Trump CIA awarded this Saudi minister for fighting terrorism. This is beyond farcical. I mean, Saudi Arabia is the hotbed of terrorism, not only in terms of material support, but in ideological support. Saudi Arabia is a Wahhabi state based on an extreme fundamentalist form of Islam that is very similar to that preached by Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And you can get on the list. I mean, the Obama administration, in its 8 years, offered more than $115 billion of arms deals to Saudi Arabia, and we've seen no indication that things will stop. In the first week, the Trump administration allowed another arms deal to go through that had previously been made. And again, when it comes to Middle East policy, a lot of this is because the Trump administration, not under just Flynn, but even under the neoconservative wing, really is focusing again on Iran as the new boogeyman. Iran was previously definitely a target under the Obama administration, but they certainly did not reach out with an olive branch. They imposed sanctions on Iran, etc. But the nuclear deal was a sign that they were looking for some kind of diplomacy. And the Trump administration has infamously, of course, pledged to tear up the Iran deal. They've moved away from that pledge now. But, Mattis, who's seen as a moderate in the cabinet, Defense Secretary Mattis, who's very close to Robert Harward, who is the frontrunner to be the next national security advisor. We now know that Mattis actually was considering having the U.S. Navy intercept and board an Iranian vessel. This is an actual Iranian vessel. This would be a provocation that could even amount to an active war in international waters. But Mattis decided that he might not want to do it because it would violate international law, very likely. So again, there's this deep-seated hatred of Iran. They see Iran as the heart of all evil and the root of all their problems. And Saudi Arabia is a staunch ally in that fight. Trump already had an extended phone call with Saudi King Salman. Mattis already had an extended phone call with Mohammed bin Salman, the deputy crown prince, who will likely be King Salman's successor. So I anticipate, when you look at the conflict in Yemen, where the Trump administration continues to ramp up tension and carry out more intense military action, I certainly anticipate that the Gulf regimes will remain close U.S. allies in this unified fight against Iran.
And finally, Ben, the Trump administration is reeling. There's been massive protests. The courts have weighed in on his Muslim ban and blocked that, at least temporarily. There have been protests against his deportations. They're not quite at the level under the Obama administration, but it seems like that there is mass mobilization, the likes we haven't seen of since the Bush years, really. Where is this going to lead? It seems like the Democrats are doing all they can without, they would say, without having real power in Capitol Hill right now. Where do you see the leadership coming for the Trump resistance? Is it in the streets or is it with the Democrats?
It's certainly in the streets. I mean, the Democrats might say that they're offering some kind of resistance, but I see very little. I mean, some of them actually voted for members of Trump's cabinet, even Elizabeth Warren, and she's seen as this staunch progressive, although on many issues she's certainly not progressive, especially foreign policy. But even she supported Ben Carson to lead HUD. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on, and it's been amazing to see this enormous grassroots activism against the opportunism, frankly, of the Democratic Party. Even Bernie Sanders, who's not a Democrat, but even he has in some ways conceded. And the people who are really pushing the politicians from the left are, the thousands of protesters going out in the streets. Here in New York, on every Tuesday now, there are weekly protests. It's called Resist Trump Tuesday. And 2 weeks ago, more than 3,000 people gathered outside the apartment of Chuck Schumer, the senator here, who's a notoriously right-wing Democrat, supported the Iraq War, etc., opposed the Iran deal, and Schumer has in many ways he's seen as this resistance figure. He's seen as a leader of the Democratic Party in the Senate, but he has not really taken much staunch action. And thousands of protesters were outside his apartment chanting "Resist or resign, resist or resign." And people are calling for what would amount to forms of civil disobedience, right? Not just on the streets, but even in Congress. People are calling for filibusters. People are calling for delays, whatever they can do to actually echo what the Republicans were doing for the past 8 years. For maybe not all 8 years, but especially when they regained majorities in Congress, Republicans were trying to stymie anything the Obama administration could do. But now that there's a majority Republican contingent in Congress, Democrats are not pursuing the same strategy. They still have this, bipartisan consensus mentality that Obama, was the embodiment of, and we saw how that did not work in any way. Republicans understand how power functions much better, and they also know what they want much more. I mean, the Democratic Party is, of course, supposedly a left-wing party, but it's bankrolled by Wall Street. It's chock full of hawks, and that leads to this kind of mealy-mouthed politics where people will say one thing and then they won't really follow up on it. And thanks to these massive protests, I mean, we're seeing some resistance, but if the protests don't continue, I don't anticipate Democrats continuing the supposed resistance either. I mean, they keep saying don't normalize Trump, and we should not normalize Trump. He is a very far right president. He's already pushed through a lot of extreme policies, but unfortunately, the Democratic Party is really helping to normalize his administration already.
All right, Ben Norton, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for all our viewers who were watching on Facebook. You can check out all of our coverage at therealnews.com. Thank you so much for joining us.